Pandora ribbon bracelet, you'll need ribbons, and we raided our stash for all these fun little scraps of ribbon. You'll need a Pandora bead. This is one that has crystals on it. You'll need a magnet clasp. Ours also has crystals on it. This is 2 parts of a magnet clasp here stuck together. You'll need end caps or bead caps. These are from the Kumihimo section in the craft store, and you want to make sure they have a hole in the end and some room on the inside. And you need wire for wire wrapping. We're going to use 24 gauge and it's gold look. For tools, you'll need wire cutters and scissors. The first step is to line up all of our ribbons. And what we want to do is get them all the same length. So I'm just going to lay them all out here. God, aren't they beautiful? We buy loose ribbons like this. Sometimes we see them at bead shows in a bag, and they're called thrums, T-H-R-U-M-S, and it means all those little leftover pieces of ribbon and string from like a weaving project or some other project. So that's where we got some of these beautiful ribbons. So these are all lined up now, and what we want to do is we want to cut this so it's about 7.5 inches. I have a little ruler here, and I'm just going to cut on one end straight, so these are all lined up. Cut off these little pieces. And this bracelet will end up being 6.5 inches after we put on the ends. It gets a little bit shorter. So these ends are lined up here. They're a little unironed, but we like that because then in the bracelet they'll have some movement. So that's our one side. Imagine those are all lined up. We're going to go over here to about 7.5 and cut this end. This doesn't have to be exact because they're wrinkly and things, they're going to have some loose movement in the bracelet. So these are our thrums or ribbon ends. Ribbon stash all lined up. And next we want to put the Pandora bead on all of these at the same time. But we found from experience that it's better to put the ribbons through one at a time. It's hard to fit them all through at the same time. So I'm just going to poke them through until we have all the ribbons going through our Pandora bead here. Pandora's, I think it's a brand name. You don't have to get a real Pandora bead, but it means one of these wide mouth beads. And the reason we chose that for this project is because we're putting so much stuff inside the bead. We have all these ribbons that need to fit in there. That's getting full in there. I have to use just one side here. Okay, just 2 more. Poke that one in there. We tried to pick ribbons that had different textures. So as you can see, some of these are kind of rickracky, and some are just like satin cord, and some's just like plain ribbon. And having a mix like that is part of the prettiness of the bracelet. So there's our last one. And then I'm just going to pull all the threads or ribbons out so the ends are lined up together. And once I do that, we'll be ready to put on the clasp. So we've got our Pandora bead on our ribbons, and we need to put on the ends. To do that, I cut a 3-inch piece of gold wire. I'm going to bend it into a hairpin like that. So it's just got a little bend in it. And then I'm going to take all the ends, I'm going to line them up here on one side. Some of them are sticking out more than others. I'm just going to pull them so they're a little more even. Like that. And I'm going to come down about, oh, maybe it's a 1/2 inch from the end of the shortest one. And I'm going to grab that with the hairpin. So I'm tucking those ends all into the crook of the hairpin there where it turns. I'm going to bend the ribbons back on themselves like that. I can hold it nice and tight. And I'm going to twist the wires together. And I want to twist it so it's up tight against those ribbons. And then I'm going to feed these two wires through the bead cap. And here's a trick. If you cut one end of the wire shorter than the other, you're not trying to feed both ends at the same time, which is hard, it turns out. So now I can put in one and the next, just like that. And then pull that bead cap over the end. We'll trim these loose pieces shortly. But now I've got the wires coming out of the bead cap, and I can feed on the clasp. And now I'm going to bend the wires back over the clasps. This is another hairpin, back that way. And then I'm just going to take these two ends and wrap them twice around this piece of wire that's showing here, this neck. Mine's a little longer maybe than yours should be, but I want you to be able to see it. So I'm doing it kind of extra big. But you can make this smaller. You can use your tools if you have chain nose pliers. You can use those here, but you really don't need them. You can bend the wire with your fingers. And then we're going to trim the end here with the wire cutters. Bonk. And then all these little loose guys, we can just trim with the scissors. Don't cut the ribbons that are the bracelet. We're just going to cut these pieces. And I'll probably go back and make that tidier, but I want to move on to the other side so you can see how it's done. That side's done, isn't that nice? Now I just do the same thing to the other side. I'm going to pull the ribbons kind of tight through the Pandora bead. See, that's a little too loose, I think. So I'm going to pull that one and that one. We can center the bead later, but I just want to make sure we don't have too much slack on one end. And now instead of going to the end here and working my way back, I want to measure the bracelet to make sure I've got the next end where I want it. So I've got my ruler here. And I want it to, when it's finished, I want it to be about 6.5 inches. That's for my wrist. If your wrist is bigger or smaller, you can adjust it. But that means I want to put the hairpin at about 6 inches because that clasp and the wire work is going to bring it out a little bit. So I think I'm going to put the hairpin about here. So I'm just going to pinch that. Forgot to bend my hairpin. There's my hairpin. Pinching this. You can twist it a little bit. And then I'm going to slide the hairpin right over those ends. Make sure you didn't miss any. Bend the ribbons back on themselves. And twist the wire. You need to twist it a couple times, but you want it to be tight up against the ribbons. My ends here are already uneven, so they'll go nicely through the bead cap. 1 and 2. And then pluck that down over your ribbon end. And add the other side of the magnet clasp. You can use any kind of clasp for this, but we think the magnet works really well for this one. Bending that back over, another hairpin. And then doing my 2 wraps. So that's 1 wrap. I need a third hand in here. No, I got it. And 2 wraps. And I'm going to trim that. Again, this is more space than you need, but I want you to see it. So you can do that a little tighter and it won't look as leggy as mine does. And then we just need to trim these little ends. I'm not going to trim the bracelet. Careful there. And we're just going to cut that close to the bead cap. And you can spread the ribbons out so that some of that short pieces are stuck in the middle and pull the ribbons around. Center our Pandora. This guy's got a lot of slack. I'm going to pull him over. That's one of these. That one. So it's a little more even. And there's our Pandora ribbon bracelet. So pretty.